Hey folks, this is your professor, Rodney Figueroa from M160. Starting again, new week, week 6 it should be. Not quite halfway there, but I had a couple of announcements to make and a couple of things that I needed to talk about in relation to this week. So hopefully if you're watching this video, you'll get a pretty good idea of how this week is going to go. And kind of understand what's happening schedule-wise. I need to make a couple changes to the course, and I'm going to explain that here shortly. So, number one, the first thing I want to talk about is a change in next week and ongoing schedule. So, I'm starting a new game development project, and I'm going to be consulting for just a few, I wouldn't call them friends, I would say colleagues. It's just, there's a difference between people who you call friends that you work with and colleagues who you work with. I wouldn't necessarily consider them my friends. But you'll figure that out as you kind of get into the industry and start figuring out, like, you know, who you want to call a friend and who you want to work with professionally. These are people who I'm working with professionally. So a new gig is popped up for me. That doesn't mean anything bad for the class, but what that means is that the 160 and the 162 classes are going to be indirectly affected. Starting on the 4th, I believe, which I think is next week for you guys. This is going to be next week. The class is no longer going to be dropped on Monday. I'm going to try to continue to drop it on the Monday because I think that's going to be useful for you guys as a whole. But unfortunately, because of scheduling conflicts and contractual obligations, you guys are more than likely going to be moved to Tuesday, and the 162 class being moved to Wednesday for the foreseeable future. It's kind of an unavoidable schedule conflict. Obviously, you know, the university expects us to be working professionally, at least for adjuncts. At least that's what I've been told. We're expected to work professionally while also teaching, and this is a good opportunity for me to continue to work professionally, but also continue to orate and orchestrate the intermediate and the beginner class at a level of quality that I feel is important and necessary to the overall teaching of the course. So what that means is starting next week, it's extremely likely, barring something that I can do on my end schedule-wise, and I'm going to see if I can play around with it a little bit more. Barring that, it's going to be likely that you guys are going to be getting your classes on Tuesday going forward. It doesn't change a lot for you guys. These last few weeks, you guys have been getting the class a bit later than intended, mostly because I've had that schedule conflict now for a few weeks, and that's kind of been an issue with the scheduling conflicts not allowing me to record the classes at a time that is going to be useful and beneficial to you guys. And typically speaking, I've been finishing the recordings a lot later than intended, and because of that, that really affects the overall quality of the recordings. So in order to kind of keep things a little bit more streamlined for you guys, I'm going to be moving the class drops from Monday to Tuesday, and that should give me the entire day to kind of work on things. I also do need to talk about that as well. If I'm lagging a little bit, it's because I'm installing a file for later today. We're going to be finishing up the material discussion this week. There have been some questions posted in Discord as to the appropriate workflow for texture development. I'm going to talk about that today in this particular lecture. There is going to be some homework, but it's not going to be crazy. It's just going to be, hey, if you follow along, you'll be able to build this. I just need you to build this so that you understand it, work through it. We'll talk about the math, and it'll be kind of like a more intermediate approach to making a material. We're going to work on one material together. It's going to be a glass material, and I think it's going to be useful to kind of showcase how it works. There were a few questions on some of the height map stuff from some of the advanced students. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about pixel depth offset, which is a viable method. I'm going to talk a little bit less about bump offset since I've already talked about it last week. And I need to talk about Pixel Mixer and Substance Alchemist and Substance Designer. Now, I've been made aware by my boss that there is currently not, at least in this semester, there's currently not a modeling class being offered. I have been making references to a class that I believed was being offered this semester, but it seems like there currently is not a professor who is teaching it, or it is currently not being scheduled. I don't know the answer to that. So a couple of you guys have reached out and asked me, are we going to do any game modeling, or are we going to do any of those things? And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've been trying to kind of figure out where it would work, if it did work. And I have to say, I just don't necessarily have the time, and nor the not that I don't have the capacity. Of course, I would teach it, because that's where I got my start. I started with as a 3D artist way back in the day, like 2008. But part of the problem with teaching 3D modeling or teaching a program like Substance Designer or even Substance Painter is that it's not something that you guys would learn in a week. I could legitimately build an entire course that's dedicated to teaching Substance Designer, Substance Painter, Pixel Mixer, to making game art. This class is not built around game art or asset production. As far as the district is concerned, and as far as my PLOs, my preferred learning outcomes, and my CLOs, which is my course learning outcomes, this course is specifically referred to as the Unreal course, both beginner, intermediate, and advanced, or all three, beginner, intermediate, and advanced, with the intention of spending most of our time in the Unreal Engine and learning about how to execute essentially the higher functions of the Unreal Engine. For those of you who may have attended the class with the intention of learning how to do 3D modeling, or learning how to use Substance Designer, or learning how to use those programs, unfortunately, I just do not have the room in the curriculum as it is currently to teach everything. I think, and this dovetails into my final thing before we get started today, I think it is important to discuss, and I think it is important to keep that in mind. But unfortunately, this is not an asset production class. The benefit to this class is that we have access to things like Substance Designer, or excuse me, not Substance Designer, to Pixel, to Pixel Megascans, which is now integrated in UE5, and that allows us to have a library of pre-made assets that we can rebuild and we can use to our needs, and we can download textures, and we can download foliage, and we can grab everything that we need. What we need on a per week basis I provide for you guys, and this is mostly so that the entire class doesn't really get hung up trying to become 3D artists. If you join this particular class with the intention of becoming a 3D artist, unfortunately I just don't have the capacity to cover it. The advanced students, not the intermediate, but the third class, does teach a full asset production kit, but that is just literally 2 weeks. If you join this class with the hope that I would be teaching how to 3D model, how to unwrap, how to do all those things, those are really their own classes. And if you guys feel inclined to want those classes taught here at Mesa College, make your voices heard and reach out to the powers that be. Reach out to my boss, Carlos Toth, He shows up in the library, in the he's the department head for multimedia. Let him know that's a class that you want. Let him know that if you want I know there's a games narratives class being taught by, I believe it's, Joe Shupak. It's being taught by Joseph Shupak, who is SOE alum, and that class is being taught periodically. And there's a lot of room to grow the department. I believe that the department was interested in hiring a new professor to teach 3D modeling. And I know we're at 10 minutes now, but I do need to talk about this because it is important, and it is important to the future of the class and whatnot. So because of the inherent limitations in my ability to dovetail a modeling or an art asset production course onto the Unreal class, I think if you guys really want to see those kinds of classes, you should make your voices heard, and you should talk to the powers that be to say, hey, I want to take a modeling class, or hey, I want asset design for games, or I want something that is going to cater that more to what I want, right? Excuse me, by I mean you guys, obviously, you guys and gals. So unfortunately, I just don't have the capacity or the time. When this course started a couple years ago, there was a lot of interest from the student body to learn Substance Designer and to learn a lot of those programs that would help them create material assets, right? That used to consume about 5 to 6 weeks of this particular course, which meant that there were only about 10 weeks to cover the Unreal Engine from a beginner's standpoint, and there was a lot that I just could not cover in those 10 weeks, right? I know we did lighting for 2 weeks, and we're about to do materials again for the second week because we didn't finish everything we needed to do last week, and that's okay. But there really, figuratively, is not enough time, and honestly, it would require its own focus, its own core, to be able to teach it. I am going to demo some things today for you guys, but they're not going to be homework. I will talk about how to get Substance Designer for you guys for free if you are interested in pursuing Substance Designer and if you want to become a material artist. But this is an Unreal class, and the Unreal class has to focus as much as possible on Unreal, so that those students who do have some experience with materializing can use Unreal. I don't feel inclined to apologize for the way that the course is structured. However, I'm just one man, and in a department that does not necessarily have every person in every degree and every capacity to teach those programs for the full pipeline. I believe currently the only professor, at least for this semester, teaching any kind of modeling is in the animation course, and that's, I think, 137. I'd have to look at the course log very quickly to see what was being taught in that particular class. But as it stands, I currently do not have a modeling or 3D modeling section. There are times that we use 3D modeling, and I talk about it in this particular class, but unfortunately, some of you guys have reached out privately asking if there was going to be any kind of game art asset production, and unfortunately the answer to that is not until the third class, and only really as a sample, not necessarily as a, hey, this is exactly what you need to do. Mostly because you guys don't necessarily have access to all the things that you need. Most of you guys are using either Blender or have Maya installed, or don't even have either installed. You guys are in the, as students, only working with what you have. Most of you don't have access to Substance Designer or Substance Painter, Most of you don't have a lot of experience with modeling, and so because of that, to teach 3D modeling just as a 3D modeling course would take all of the 16 weeks just to get like one element. This is the Unreal course, and because it's the Unreal course, the focus is on utilizing those pre-made assets to create inside of UE4 and learn as we go. And it's only week 6, and there's still a lot more to go. If you check out the syllabus, there's still a lot more to go. But as it currently stands, the course is not designed to accommodate an additional section of game artists, etc., etc. And for that, I do apologize, but it's just in the nature of the course. No individual course can be the everything course. This is an Unreal course, and the focus is on Unreal. For those of you who are interested in learning more about games modeling, and also recognize that it's not currently, at least this semester, being offered, PM me. I've got a lot of resources that I can direct you to. There are things that I can show you. There's videos that I can direct you to learn something like Blender or learn something like Maya relatively quickly, to learn those elements. But for this particular class, unfortunately, I just do not have the capacity or the time to cover everything that needs to be covered without losing a lot of core focus on the Unreal Engine. Like I said, this class used to be dedicated to teaching about 5 weeks of Substance Designer when it was hot. And now there have been some changes, and now those 5 weeks have gone back to learning Unreal Engine. And we've used that extra time to learn Lumen, and we're using the extra time today to learn some of the changes in Unreal 5, for those of you who are using Unreal 5, and the differences between that and Unreal 4 going forward, right? So, and that leads me kind of my last point. I apologize, it's almost 20 minutes. I understand this is a long intro for today. The last thing I need to talk about is scheduling. So, for a lot of you guys, as some of your professors probably have already talked about, or if not have talked about, have kind of like a synchronous or partially asynchronous course. This is a fully asynchronous course with a synchronous Discord, and we synchronize on Fridays, or excuse me, Thursdays, so that we can have a lab hour and we can talk to each other, and I can do a demo and whatnot for you guys. For every hour or so that you guys get of content, it takes me about an hour and a half to 2 hours to curate into a video. For better for worse, that has kind of turned into a situation that has basically, if not doubled, then tripled the amount of work from my end. Mostly because there's so many of you who want so many different elements of Unreal covered that aren't covered in the syllabus, but I figure it should be important, so I do cover them as much as I can, especially during the office hour. Some of you guys are being not necessarily upset with me, but some of you guys have reached out and let me know there's a lot of information, and I understand that. And part of the issue that's happening on my end is I end up recording a lot of stuff that gets thrown out. And if any of you guys have been paying attention to my background while I've been teaching, I'll usually start teaching when there's bright sun, and if you guys watch my videos, by the time the videos are done, it is black outside. And that's not necessarily super healthy either, not just for me, but for you guys, because there's so much stuff that gets cut, so much stuff that I think should be in the program that gets cut because of editing or time or etc., etc. So moving forward, what I'm going to be doing is at the beginning of these lectures, I'm going to be setting a timer for about what the course stipulation is supposed to be at, were we to be in person, which is 4 hours of lecture, 4 hours of lab, which means that since there is no quote-unquote lab day for this class, the lab is whatever you guys choose to have the time. But I'm going to try to limit the amount of in-class function, meaning since we're going to be transitioning some of these courses back to in-person in the fall, check your emails. There are going to be some announcements related to that. I don't know the answer for this particular course just yet. But as those things are going to start transitioning, I'm not going to have as much raw time on this particular course if we are in a classroom setting, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that, as I've mentioned in the past, that gets cut due to time. A lot of the loading gets cut. A lot of the baking gets cut. If we were in person, a lot of that stuff we would have to just wait through. So what's going to happen over the next few weeks is I'm going to dovetail the course a little bit tighter so that I'm not sitting here for 12 hours recording a 2.5, 3 hour course for you guys. And editing it and making sure that it's working for you guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to include all of that time in the particular course. You guys will get more concise courses. You guys will get more concise information, better recordings, and a lot less content cut. So if you guys, as long as you guys stick around, and as long as you guys give me the opportunity to continue editing these videos and to curate the class a little bit better, by the time we are back in person, it will be a lot smoother a transition from the online space into a physical presence. Because as you guys know, the county is currently trying to figure out what the move-in plan is. And I don't know what to say about the fall quarter, or the fall semester, excuse me. Excuse me, not the fall semester. This is the fall semester. I don't know what to say about the winter semester. Sorry about that, folks. I don't know what to say about the winter semester. But I do know that there is a lot of emphasis being put on next year to be back in person. So as soon as I get the call for that, I don't really have much of a say in how that works. And I think it would behoove the class considerably more if we were focused on making sure that we were able to accomplish in the amount of time all of the elements of the class. Because the difference between in-person and here is I can record, 100 hours of video, and you guys would still get the shortened version of it. But if we're in person, we don't really get that extra time. I specifically remember teaching this class in person, and a lot of time does get lost to baking or waiting for Unreal or etc., etc., and that's just the nature of the beast. And because that's the case, a lot of that stuff getting cut out of this video does not make for a good in-person transition. So, as the district is more or less interested in starting to convert some classes back to in-person, I'm going to start to curate the class a little bit more to prepare for that, so that I'm not recording 6, 7, 8 hours of content for a 3 to 4 hour class. I'm going to start cutting my time. So if we do run out of time, you guys will hear my thing probably. I will make a mention like, okay, that's all the time that we have for today, for my health and your guys' health, and then whatever gets curated from that is going to be the overall core class. You guys will get about the same length of classes, but the quality will be probably more improved. The hope is that it will be improved, and it's going to excuse me. and that's going to help swallow my own spit, or breathe in my own spit, and that's going to help the transition from the amount of free extra time that I have to produce a 4-hour block into what could feasibly be happening in a 4-hour block. So treating this as an actual class where I do have 4 hours to work with this, I'm going to be cutting the class off at 4 hours in real time, but you guys still get all the content, and you guys still get all the curation. So that'll help the transition back to in-person, because my biggest fear right now is that I'm going to assume, and I believe folks are going to assume, that since a lot of classes are remote, and so a lot of classes are asynchronous, professors can put as much content into their in-person classes as they were able to with their recordings, without recognizing that a lot of those recordings had a lot of curation. So this has gone on 20 minutes too long. I wanted to go ahead and close this out. This week we're going to be talking about finishing up materials. We're going to start by making some basic materials, just like last time, but I'm going to talk about UV dependent and UV independent materials. We'll build one very quickly. I'll talk about the elements around them. We'll go into Substance Designer. We'll go into, we won't be covering Substance Painter in this particular class. We'll talk about Kixel Mixer, assuming it gets loaded in time, and whatever doesn't get loaded in time, I'll do another demo for the office hour, just to kind of keep things spry and energetic. Sorry. And we'll move on from there. Alright guys, I apologize for the long intro. It is what it is, but I will see you guys in the next video for some more materials. We'll wrap it up this week, and then we'll move on to bigger and better things next week, which I believe is chaos physics next week for you guys. So physics is going to be fun. We'll do physics constraints, but that's going to be next week. We'll finish up this week, and I'll see you guys in the next video.